Okay, well, welcome to Family Talk. Tonight we are focusing on setting positive habits for our kids, specifically for elementary age students. I'm Alysia Rich with the Andover School District, and I'm so glad that you are joining us. I'm going to share my screen here and get our night started. Okay, creating positive and lasting habits for our children. Gosh, this is important, isn't it? This is an area where, there's just so much work that we can do to make a big difference in the lives of our kiddos. So I love this quote as we start from Aristotle. The habits that we form from childhood make no small difference, but rather they make all the difference. Gosh, there are things that we can be doing now as parents that are going to make a difference in the long run for our children. And I'll be really honest with you. I am a mom to 5. We have a blended family. We are pulled in lots of different directions, and it's really easy to kind of move day to day, moment to moment, be in the rush of what's the next thing that has to get accomplished. And sometimes that intentionality can be a challenge. But I just want to remind you that the small things that we take the time to do now really are going to make a big difference for our kids in the long run. So why do habits matter for kids? Why is this a topic that's important? I think very practically for parents right now, at least for me, I want my kids to be able to be independent, right? With several of them, and 4 of our 5 are in school full time. I need them to be able to do things like brush their teeth on their own, make their bed, make sure their bag is packed. But why do the habits matter for the kids from their perspective? Why is this something that's important? The first thing that I think is just critical for our children is that it helps with security. So we know about children that even though they probably won't admit this to us, they thrive on consistency. They thrive on routine and knowing what they can count on. So if we can create habits and help them create habits that are going to be lasting in their lives, we're creating that sense of security. We're saying to them, we really want you to feel comfortable moment to moment in your life. That security is going to lead to all sorts of other positive things. For instance, it's going to help with increased confidence. I'm not saying necessarily that every child that doesn't have habits is going to have low confidence or behavior issues. I mentioned improved behavior as well, but I think giving them the opportunity to show how they can be independent, to show how they can take care of themselves is going to just increase their confidence. It's going to help them feel better. That's going to lead to improved behavior. Even if you've got a kid that's already behaving well, they're going to feel that pride of that self-accomplishment, and they're going to want to continue that. It's going to help their organization. Gosh, we know as adults, small habits make a big difference as far as being organized, being able to complete tasks on time, being able to stay on top of multiple things that we have going on in our lives. And most importantly, I think the reason that habits matter so much for kids, especially from an early age, is that character formation piece. We are teaching them valuable lessons that are going to impact every aspect of their lives, regardless of whether it's in the classroom or in our homes, on the sports field, in a job someday. They are building character to be the type of person who can follow through, who can complete tasks, who can take initiative. And those are all things that we want for our kids. So with all that good stuff said, how do we do that, right? I want to challenge you tonight to perhaps think a little bit differently about forming a new habit. I know for me, at least in the past, my initial thought about a habit was that you needed to think about what you wanted from it, right? So kind of put that goal in mind first. Well, I'm going to challenge us to flip that and think backwards, perhaps. So I love this quote from James Clear. It says, every action you take is a vote for the type of person that you wish to become. James Clear is the author of Atomic Habits, and several of the things I'm going to share with you tonight are out of his book. I think it's a phenomenal resource for setting goals and forming habits. So he challenges us to actually look at identity first, and then move to think about the process, and then to think about the outcomes. So what does that mean? When we look at identity, we're focusing on our belief about ourselves, our belief about our child, or most importantly, in this case, our child's belief about him or herself. So I want to give an example from his book because I think it really hits the nail on the head well. He talks about a man who has a significant amount of weight to lose. And so the first thing that this man does is he begins going to the gym every day, sets a timer on his watch for 5 minutes, gets on the treadmill, walks for 5 minutes, and at the end of that time, gets off and he leaves the gym. Well, we know, hearing that, 5 minutes on a treadmill, if you have a significant amount of weight to lose, it's not going to make much of a difference, right? But his first initial focus wasn't losing a bunch of weight. His initial focus was changing his identity. He was becoming a person who went to the gym every day. So when we're thinking about our kids, what is the identity that we want to be speaking over them? Yes, I want my kids to be able to make their beds because I like a clean room. I want them to be able to brush their teeth on their own because 1, I don't like to nag them about it. And 2, I don't want them to be the kid with bad breath at school, right? But what is it really that I'm trying to get out of that? What are the underlying identity pieces that I'm trying to build for my child in whatever that habit is, and then focus on that. So we first want to speak that identity over our children, and we want to help them learn how to speak that over themselves as well. So let's say one of the habits you're trying to form is about daily reading for a child. You want to begin to tell them, you are a reader. You are a great reader. You're an enthusiastic reader. Whatever way you can positively encourage their identity as a reader, then we put in place in the next layer is that process. So now let's think about the action. We've established the identity. Our child is a reader. What does that action look like? Well, readers read every day. And then that's where we are going to dive in most deeply tonight into setting those habits that are really going to create that action, right? But the outcome is the result is where we think about that goal long-term, that our child does become that independent reader that we're wanting. So there's really 4 steps to building any habit. And this is the case for people no matter what age we are, okay? So there's going to be a cue, a craving, a response, and a reward. I'm going to give an example for myself. The cue is the trigger. So let's say my family, we decide to go out to dinner and we walk into a Mexican restaurant. Walking into that Mexican restaurant is a trigger for me that I want chips and queso. That's my craving, okay? My response to that is the actual habit that I follow through with. So I walk in, that's my trigger. My craving, my motivation is I want chips and queso. So what am I going to do? What's my response? I'm going to order that at the restaurant. And then the end goal or the reward is what happens from that. And the easy part there for me is that I get to paint it queso at the end. But if you are something for school, and if you're real quick, if your computer isn't muted, if I could ask you to mute that real quick, just so we don't have background noise. Thank you so much. So thinking about school or something for a kiddo, let's say we are trying to help them remember to complete their homework at night. So they need some type of a cue. They need that trigger that's going to help them remember they have homework. So perhaps it's a note on the refrigerator because they always go to a snack, or perhaps it's for a little while a reminder from a parent or an older sibling who's at home. They need some motivation, something that's going to make them want to create or to complete that homework. The response is the actual homework, that they're sitting down and they're doing it at the time that you've suggested. And then the reward is going to be, is it the grade that they're working for? Is it being able to attend Friday fun at the end of the week in their class? Is it something that you as a family have set up that you're going to do when they complete that? So knowing that this is the process, then let's talk about what that actually looks like, how we make it happen. So this is where we're going to spend most of our time tonight, looking at basically the 4 laws of habit formation. These are 4 things that we need to do in order to really create a habit. Now, let's remember that a habit isn't something that we do for a few weeks and then we stop. A habit is truly something that we do over time consistently, right? So we're thinking about things that will not be activities we have to remind our kids to complete. They're things that they really are doing on their own. So first, we want to make it obvious. Our brains crave connections and structure. So anytime we walk into a situation or we experience a situation, our brain is automatically reaching out and trying to find anything it can that they're familiar with, so that they can connect that to pieces of information that it's unfamiliar with. So making the habit obvious, setting that up, is a way that we can trigger those connections in our brain. And let's talk a little bit more about what that means. The first thing we want to do is create some awareness to what life already looks like. And I think a fantastic way to do that is making a habit scoreboard. And I highly suggest that you do this with your child. So I want to show you an example. Let's say that you're wanting to work on something having to do with their morning time. That's the example that I have here. So you're going to sit down with your child, and over on the left side of the screen, I just began to list things that could happen in the morning for an elementary age child before they go to school. So you and your child together are going to sit down, and it's going to probably feel funny to them, and that's okay. You're going to say, from the time you wake up, I want you to tell me everything that you do in the morning, no matter how small it is. So if they take a shower in the morning, do they hang their towel up when they're done? Where do they put their pajamas? Really go through everything. And there's a point to all of this. So once they have their list, and I have my list here, then you're going to go through with the child and you're going to think, okay, so our goal was, let's take the reading example. Our goal was that you're going to become an effective reader. So I want to decide with you, is the activity or the habit that you did, is that positive? Does it help you in progress of your goal? Is it negative, meaning it's really ineffective, it's not going to help you get to your goal? Or is it neutral? It doesn't actually make a difference with this specific goal. Neutral things are like waking up, going to the bathroom. They're things that you have to do, right? But they're not going to make you a better reader. So there's going to be several neutral things that happen in your day, and that's fine. But what are the positives? So as I look at this list, eating breakfast, it may not seem directly related to becoming a good reader, but we know as parents that eating a good breakfast goes a long way into how they can perform at school, how their brain is able to work, the energy that they have, the level of connection in school they're able to make. So eating breakfast is a great positive habit that they have already on their list. What about watching TV? If the goal is becoming a better reader, watching TV isn't really helping. So maybe that can be exchanged for something else. So we're going to put a negative by it. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing to do. It just means in this case, it's not helping us meet our goal. And then if you keep going, packing your lunch, brushing teeth, reading a book, that does help us specifically toward this goal. Let's put a plus sign. So then now you can have some open conversation with your child about areas or specific habits, that they see that maybe they need to let go of during that time. Maybe they felt like they were negative. They're not impacting their goal in a positive way. They're going to let go. They see some positive things and they think, oh, okay, well, right now I read a book maybe for 5 minutes before the bus comes. What if I could stretch that and read for 10 minutes and make a small change there? So that habit scoreboard is just a way for you and your child to begin to see what's already happening during their day, and then what can you build on. Once you have that idea, then you're kind of able to know where you want to plug in habits, right? And we're talking about making it obvious, right? So for me, for kids, one of my favorite things to do is habit stacking. And this is exactly what it sounds like. Think about stacking blocks. So you're going to take a habit they already have, and all kids have them. Take a positive habit they already have, and then you're going to stack right with that, right after it, something that you want them to begin to do. And so perhaps I'll give a real life example here. Our older son, for the longest time, could not remember to put deodorant on in the morning. Everything else that happened in the bathroom, he was able to remember to do, but not put on his deodorant. And so we would have conversations and we'd talk about why it's important to wear deodorant. Nothing was really helping. And then it occurred to me, it could be very simple, that we just need to trigger his brain, because we talked about that cue, right? So I began every evening putting his deodorant right next to the sink. So he got up in the morning, he went to the bathroom, and when he went to wash his hands and get his teeth brushed, his deodorant was sitting right there. Now, that triggered his brain to be able to do that. So after I go to the bathroom, I put on my deodorant. He's then going to begin stacking those habits together. Another example might be something you want your child to do after eating breakfast, talking about reading the book a minute ago. So perhaps we leave a book in the kitchen at the end of every evening. And then in the morning, when your child wakes up and has breakfast, a habit they already have established, after that, they read a book. That's their new habit they're going to work on. So that stacking helps to make those connections, which our brain really needs. And then I've already mentioned this a little bit, kind of entwined with the habit stacking, but designing an environment for success. Gosh, this is a step that is crucial for kids. What this means is actually looking around at your physical environment. Is it their bedroom, the kitchen, the bathroom, whatever area of their house? At school, it would be their desk, maybe even just their backpack, their cubby, their locker. What do you need in that physical space? What does the child need in that physical space in order to be successful? So I mentioned putting the deodorant by the sink, putting a book in the kitchen in the evening. Now, for a while, obviously, you're going to want to help them with that because they're not going to remember on their own, right? This is a new habit one they haven't yet created. Or maybe they have a list of things to do at night before bed, and the last one is leave a book in the kitchen. But if you're creating that environment for success, it just helps with those triggers and cues. For adults or older kids, let me just add this in there quick. Your environment actually stretches to any areas you're driving by. So let's say you want to work out more. If you can plan your route from maybe dropping the kids off at school and then you have to drive by the gym on your way home, it's going to help trigger that. I should go to the gym and work out. I'm already driving by. It's easy to do that, right? So making it obvious. The second step is making it attractive. So for adults or kids alike, we like to do things that are attractive, right? That feel good to us. So temptation bundling is a great way to do that. Connecting something that we call a have to, right? So you have to do your homework, connecting it to something that you enjoy, that you like to do. So maybe your child loves music. Maybe the have to is completing the homework, and you can connect it to listening to some music while they do that, or sitting outside because they really love to be outside. Maybe their love is animals. Their have to is reading. So you help them find some books about animals. Maybe they're fantasy where animals are talking. Maybe there's some nonfiction in there where they can learn about different types of animals, but you're connecting what they need to do, the new habit we need them to form, with something they already enjoy. You're bundling those things together, and then it increases the likelihood they're going to want to participate in the habit. Imitating people. It's a big one, right? We know that for kids, especially when they're tiny, they walk around repeating things we say, doing things we say. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's bad. So in life, we all tend to imitate what James Clear calls the people that are closest to us in our homes, the people that are in our children's classrooms, their teachers, things like that. But we also imitate what he calls the many, looking around. Who are the people that tend to be in our lives that we spend the most time with? We're going to imitate both of those groups. So my challenge for parents, and I'm saying this to myself, maybe even more than I'm saying it to any of you, is that we first have to become the person doing what we expect our kids to be doing. And here's my example. I love a made bed. I love it. I love my kids to have a made bed. I love to walk into a room. I just think it looks clean and fresh, right? I am terrible about making my own bed. Therefore, it is difficult for me to enforce a new habit in any of my children to make their bed if I'm not already doing that. So if that's something that's really important to me, it's a habit I want to establish for my kids, I have to first establish the habit for myself, then allow them to see me doing that and begin helping them create that habit for themselves. And then I'd love for you to have some conversations with your kiddos about the many. Who are people that they spend time with, that they see around them? Maybe it's not their closest friends or people in their family, but what do they notice about people at school? Maybe they're working on being a little bit more organized, or making sure they get their homework turned in on time. Ask them to start noticing what the kids around them are doing. And maybe the kid with the super messy desk also is the kid that doesn't get homework turned in, but the kid with the nice organized desk does. Does your child notice that? Do they want to then imitate what they're seeing in the child that they're viewing as successful? All right. And then programming your brain. This is a super simple shift that can make a really big difference. Change your language. So you have to do your homework. Okay, that doesn't sound so good, right? The kids are going to go, you get to do your homework, and then we're going to do such and such. That simple shift. And especially, it's important for them to hear us using that language, but it's even more important for them to hear themselves using that language. So for them to actually change what they're saying. I have to go read to, I'm going to go read, I get to go read, something like that. And then a motivation ritual. This is associating some new habit with something that you enjoy. And a personal example for me, a while back, I had a treadmill and I had a favorite show that I loved to watch. Of course, it came on during the day while I was at work. So my motivation to get on the treadmill each night was that I would get to watch my show while I was on the treadmill. So I simply associated something that I needed to get done, my workout, with something that I really enjoyed doing already, which was watching my show. So making it attractive. We got to make it easy for us, make it easy for our kids. This is important. We talked about our brains already, that our brains need connections. They want that structure. Well, we can actually rewire our brains. It's a different topic for a different night, but it's absolutely fascinating. One of the ways we can do that is by repeating a habit. It actually causes physical change in your brain, which is pretty amazing. So if we're working to rewire our brains, we want to make it as easy as possible because we want to be able to repeat that action over and over so that it truly does become a habit. So we do that by reducing friction. Friction is anything that makes the habit feel hard. If you are sticking with the reading example, you need your child to read. I'll use our third grader as an example. She's struggling a little bit with reading right now. It's not her favorite thing to do. It feels hard. Well, when she gets ready to go read, she needs to not be sitting in the family room where her siblings who are already done with all their work are getting to relax and watch TV or play a game or do whatever they're doing, talking, being loud. She needs to be in a place that's quiet, that's comfortable for her. She needs to make sure she has a timer because right now it's really important to her that she reads in small chunks. That feels more motivating. So we have to provide that environment for her to reduce that friction, right? When there's distractions around, it's going to be very hard for her to practice that habit. And then the 2-minute rule. This is similar to the story I told about the man that went to the gym for 5 minutes every day. The 2-minute rule basically says, anytime you're starting a new habit, at first it should only take 2 minutes because we all have 2 minutes, right? So your end goal may be that you want your child to be able to read independently for 20 minutes. But if they haven't done it before, you can't sit them down the first night and say, okay, read 20 minutes. So start with 2 minutes. And I know that sounds like they're not practicing reading. You're right. They're not. That night, they're not practicing reading. They're practicing the habit of becoming a reader. And so set the timer for 2 minutes. And then praise them. Man, you did a fantastic job. I noticed your eyes were on your book the whole time. You were focused. What'd you get through? Tell me about the little bit that you read. Or if the habit is maybe practicing piano, they've been really fighting it, don't want to do the practice, then have them sit down, same thing, timer for 2 minutes, praise them at the end of that for being successful, and then say, hey, do you feel like you're ready to go? Could we double it? You think tomorrow night you could try 4 minutes? And I'm not suggesting that you drag this on for weeks and weeks until you get to the point that they're actually practicing, but showing them over a few days in a row, man, you can do this and be successful. Let's bump it up. Do you think, make it a challenge? Do you think you can do a little bit more time? Such a great way to get them motivated and working. And then last, we want to make it satisfying. And probably any kids who are listening in the background of you guys are thinking, yeah, satisfying, like give us a reward, right? When I was in the classroom, my kids would always say things like, well, what do we get for doing this? And I would say, you get the feeling of accomplishment that you did a great job on this task. We do want to give them some sort of reinforcement when they're beginning, and that can look different depending on the age of your child. So we all remember back to the potty training days. I'm in the middle of those now with our youngest. She needs reinforcement. And we do sticker charts, or for our 5-year-old, an M&M was really rewarding, just one, but he thought that was amazing when he was potty training. So something simple that they can begin to expect and anticipate as a reward for completing the habit. For older kids, it might just be something as simple as using a habit tracker. That can be in their agenda if they have an agenda from school. Our third grader who I told you about, one of the things that her teacher and I decided to do, they don't have a reading log requirement in class, but we decided to have her start keeping track in her agenda of what she was reading every night. That way her teacher could praise her at home for the time or at school, excuse me, for the time she was spending reading at home. And then our daughter knows, okay, everybody's watching, right? The adults in my life are all on the same page and are working together. It's her own way to track a habit. And it's also really powerful when you're using a habit tracker of some sort. And a simple one would just be a sticker chart, days of the week listed. But last week, for example, on Thursday, she didn't read. We weren't home at all and she didn't get her reading done. But instead of her being down on herself because she missed a night, we can celebrate the fact that 6 out of the 7 nights of last week, she met her goal of reading for 20 minutes. She's working to establish that habit. And then say, okay, so next time that happens, next Thursday is another busy Thursday with sports for several people, including herself. She has cheer practice. So what does that look like? How are we going to make sure your reading gets done? And then setting that maybe a new habit of I carry a book in the car, or she packs an extra book in her backpack, something like that. So those habit trackers are a great way. They can even be reinforcement in themselves, or something could come from that. Hey, if you can read 5 out of the 7 nights a week, then we'll celebrate with ice cream at the end of the week, or, go to the Target dollar spot, whatever that looks like. I would discourage you from tying it too much to something extrinsic, buying something or giving something, because we really do want them to get to the point where they are excited and, feeling successful, and that's their reward. But it's fair to get them to that point first. So that brings us to the end of our formal presentation. I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share here.